The bombshell from the shadows. On her deathbed, a royal nurse is breaking a 40-year silence to confess the crown's most horrific secret. Princess Diana had a third child who was stolen from her. Her time is running out to tell the truth, and so is the monarchy's. A deathbed confession is about to shatter the carefully crafted myth of the people's princess. From the sterile quiet of a hospice room, a voice long silenced by fear and a misplaced sense of loyalty is finally breaking. An elderly woman, a former royal nurse who once walked the most private corridors of Kensington Palace, has unleashed a story so jaw-dropping it threatens to unravel the modern monarchy itself. For her own safety, her name remains a secret, a final shield against the powerful institution she once served. But her words are a firestorm. With her life now measured in weeks, not years, her conscience will no longer allow her to carry the crown's darkest secret to her grave. In a recorded statement given to two trusted journalists, she reveals the unthinkable. Princess Diana, the beloved global icon, secretly gave birth to a third child, a son, a boy who was systematically and brutally erased from history. There was another baby, the nurse whispers, her voice frail but firm with conviction, and they made sure he disappeared. This isn't a tale of palace intrigue or salacious tabloid gossip. This is, she claims, a documented conspiracy of the highest order. For years, the official narrative of Diana's life has been a fixed tragedy. A lonely princess, a broken marriage to Prince Charles, and a life cut brutally short in a Paris tunnel. But this new testimony paints a far more sinister and devastating picture. It suggests the profound pain Diana carried throughout her public life was rooted in a loss so profound, so complete, it was never even allowed to be acknowledged. The nurse claims to possess handwritten notes and hidden medical records that corroborate her explosive story, fragments of truth that somehow survived the palace's systematic purge of all evidence. Her confession poses chilling questions that have lurked in the shadows for decades. Why did Diana abruptly vanish from public life for weeks in early 1984? Under the vague and unconvincing pretext of exhaustion? What was the real reason for the sudden, inexplicable overhaul of her most trusted medical team that same year? This nurse provides a single, horrific answer to it all. She alleges Diana bore an illegitimate son, and the monarchy, in a cold and calculated act of self-preservation, orchestrated his disappearance. Their motive was not spite, but something far more chilling: the absolute necessity of protecting the line of succession and the very integrity of the crown. The scandal is no longer about infidelity or a loveless marriage. It is about a stolen child and a state-sanctioned lie of monstrous proportions. After nearly 4 decades of suffocating silence, the truth is clawing its way into the light. Before she was the world's most hunted woman, she was simply Diana Spencer, a shy 19-year-old girl from an aristocratic but fractured home, thrust into the very heart of the world's most powerful family. Her 1981 wedding to Prince Charles was a global spectacle, a televised fairy tale broadcast to 750 million people who truly believed they were witnessing the dawn of a glorious new era for the House of Windsor. She became Tinseltown's new obsession, a saintly English rose destined to be queen. But the dizzying heights of public adoration masked a devastatingly swift descent into private misery. The fairy tale, as the royal nurse grimly recounts, began to unravel the very moment the carriage doors closed. Behind the grand, imposing walls of Buckingham and Kensington palaces, Diana's innocent dream of love curdled into an utter nightmare of isolation. She was a lamb offered up to the ancient wolves of tradition and protocol, while the world saw a radiant princess draped in priceless silks and the glittering Spencer tiara. The woman herself was suffocating in a gilded cage. The nurse, who was assigned to Diana during these tumultuous early years, recalls a young woman utterly lost in a labyrinth of cold corridors and even colder stairs. She was an outsider, a disruption to the unbending, 1,000-year-old machinery of the monarchy. Her husband, Prince Charles, was emotionally distant, his heart still famously tethered to his past love, Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana was left to navigate the crushing expectations of her new role completely alone. The nurse speaks of heartbreaking late nights, finding the princess weeping in her private rooms, overwhelmed by a loneliness so profound it felt like a physical presence. "They don't see me," Diana once confided in her eyes swollen and red from crying. "They see a title, a vessel for the next heir. I am a surplus to their requirements." It was in this atmosphere of profound emotional neglect, trapped in a loveless public duty, that Diana's legendary compassion was forged. But it was also where her desperation grew, a gnawing, frantic yearning for a genuine human connection that the crown could not and would not provide. This gnawing emptiness, the nurse reveals, set the stage for the most fateful and secretive decision of Diana's life, a decision that would lead to both a moment of pure, unadulterated joy and a lifetime of hidden, unbearable agony. In the suffocating confines of her royal life, Princess Diana began a desperate search for comfort beyond the palace walls. Her marriage was a sham, a cold, dynastic arrangement for the production of heirs that left her emotionally starved. The world saw the glamorous Prince and Princess of Wales, but the nurse saw two strangers sharing a palace, their public smiles a grotesque mask for the private misery that defined their union. It was during this period of intense desolation, in late 1983, that Diana reportedly formed a deep, clandestine bond with a man who was not her husband. The nurse, still bound by a lingering sense of duty, refuses to name him, but palace whispers and fragmented records point toward a trusted member of her inner circle, someone who offered her the warmth and genuine understanding she was so cruelly denied. While royal staff were trained to see only friendships, the sheer intensity of this particular connection raised silent alarms. This relationship was Diana's lifeline, a secret garden in the barren, wind-swept wasteland of her royal existence. The nurse's testimony transforms this long-rumored emotional affair into the catalyst for a dynastic crisis. Following a period of extreme emotional distress, Diana allegedly bypassed all royal protocol, arranging a series of highly secretive meetings with her personal doctor. The nurse, present for what was supposed to be routine checkups, witnessed a level of secrecy that was entirely unprecedented. Meetings were held late at night. Handwritten notes replaced official medical records. Medical supplies were requisitioned under false pretenses to avoid a paper trail. "We were told not to ask questions," the nurse recalls, her voice low. "The fewer who knew, the safer it was for everyone." But it was obvious something monumental was being concealed. The very air in Diana's private apartment at Kensington Palace was thick with a mixture of terror and a strange, defiant hope. She was taking a risk that went far beyond mere infidelity. She was challenging the very foundation of the monarchy, driven by a simple, profound human need to be loved. This forbidden solace, this one private act of rebellion, was about to create a secret so profound, so dangerous, it would have to be buried under the full, crushing weight of the crown. In the sweltering summer of 1997, just weeks before her tragic death, Princess Diana was a woman standing on the precipice of a new life. Finally, free from the iron constraints of the monarchy, she was finding her own powerful voice. According to the nurse, she was also preparing to make her most audacious and dangerous move yet. She had allegedly scheduled an unpublished legacy interview with a trusted foreign journalist, an interview where she intended to finally tell the whole, unvarnished truth, including the harrowing story of the child that was stolen from her. She was getting ready, the nurse insists, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and sorrow. She was so close. She felt that the world needed to know what had been done to her, what they were truly capable of. Diana believed that revealing the secret was the only way to protect her other sons, William and Harry, from the cold, calculating machinations of the institution she had so spectacularly escaped. She wanted to expose the truth of what the crown was willing to sacrifice in the name of self-preservation. But that interview never happened. On the 31st of August 1997, Diana's life was cut brutally short in a violent car crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. The world erupted in an unprecedented, global outpouring of grief. It was a generation-defining tragedy. But for the nurse, and the handful of others who knew her deepest secret, her death was something more. It was the final, terrible silencing of her voice. In that twisted metal wreckage, the monarchy was safe. The secret was buried with her. The nurse firmly believes that had Diana lived, her powerful maternal instinct would have eventually triumphed over her fear. She would have told the world, she states with absolute certainty, that truth was a part of her soul, and it wanted to be free. Diana's death ensured that the secret remained dormant, waiting in the shadows. Her legacy was cemented as the people's princess, a tragic victim of the press and a loveless marriage. But her truest, most painful story remained untold. A final, heartbreaking piece of a life defined by a love she was forced to abandon forever. The result of Diana's clandestine medical consultations in late 1983 was not just a secret. It was a constitutional crisis waiting to detonate. The nurse was one of only 4 people on Earth to learn the devastating truth. The Princess of Wales was pregnant. But this was not the celebrated, publicly announced pregnancy that would later bring Prince Harry into the world. This was a different child. Conceived in secrecy and destined to remain forever in the shadows. The official timeline places Harry's conception in late 1984, but this pregnancy, the nurse insists, came nearly a year earlier and was never, ever meant to see the light of day. The father, she states unequivocally, was not Prince Charles. The moment the pregnancy was confirmed, a wave of sheer, unadulterated panic washed over the small, terrified circle of confidants. This was not a happy announcement, the nurse states, her voice heavy with the grim memory. It was treated as a threat, a direct threat to the marriage, to the line of succession, and to the very stability of the crown itself. For Diana, a woman already emotionally traumatized by a loveless marriage and battling the early, vicious stages of an eating disorder, the news was overwhelming. Yet, amid the terror, there was a flicker of something else. Defiant joy. The nurse recalls walking with the princess through the moonlit gardens of Kensington Palace on a cold winter night, Diana instinctively cradling her still invisible bump. At last, Diana whispered, a rare, genuine smile gracing her lips. This one is mine. Not the crown's, not theirs. Just mine. It was a fleeting, precious moment of ownership in a life that was completely controlled by others. But that fragile hope was about to be mercilessly extinguished by the cold, calculating machinery of the institution she had married into. The men in grey suits who ran the monarchy were not concerned with Diana's personal happiness. They were concerned with optics, with lineage, and with power. An illegitimate child born to the wife of the future king was an unthinkable, catastrophic scandal, a betrayal of the fairy tale that would turn public adoration into furious contempt. The Windsors knew the truth, and they were about to act with the ruthless efficiency for which they were infamous. The confirmation of Diana's secret pregnancy triggered not a family discussion, but a covert state of emergency. Within hours, the information was escalated to the highest echelons of the royal household, bypassing Queen Elizabeth herself in the initial stages to contain the devastating fallout. The nurse's testimony paints a chilling picture of a secret war council convened by the Lord Chamberlain, the highest-ranking officer of the royal household. In a soundproofed room deep within the bowels of Buckingham Palace, this small cabal of royal strategists, the Queen's private secretary, the head of royal security, and a senior royal lawyer, gathered to address the Diana problem. The meeting was not about compassion or morality. It was a cold, pragmatic exercise in crisis management. The nurse recalls the words of one powerful courtier being repeated to Diana's terrified staff as a grim warning. There is no place for a bastard in the line of succession. This situation will be handled. A plan, codenamed to sound like a routine estate matter, was swiftly and ruthlessly put into motion. The primary objective was absolute containment. Diana, no longer a princess but a dangerous liability, was to be isolated. The nurse describes how a subtle but impenetrable net was thrown around her. Her private telephone calls were suddenly monitored for security reasons. Her mail was screened. Her meals were brought to her directly, ostensibly for her privacy, but in reality, to prevent any communication with the outside world. She was a prisoner in her own gilded palace. Those who knew the truth were bound by oaths of secrecy or neutralized. The nurse recounts how 2 junior staff members who innocently asked too many questions about the princess's sudden illness were summarily reassigned, one to a distant diplomatic post in Africa, the other given an unexpected early retirement with a generous pension and an ironclad non-disclosure agreement. The message was brutally clear. Silence would be rewarded. Curiosity would be punished. The worst part of the plan was its chilling efficiency, the calm, methodical way the monarchy prepared to erase a life before it had even truly begun. Diana was alone, cornered, and about to face the devastating consequences of her one act of forbidden love. The public was told that the Princess of Wales, suffering from crippling nervous exhaustion, had retreated for a period of absolute rest and recovery. The reality, according to the nurse, was a carefully orchestrated exile. Under the guise of a therapeutic getaway, Diana was spirited away to a remote, private royal estate deep in the Scottish Highlands, a place of stark, haunting beauty and impenetrable isolation. This was not a sanctuary. It was a prison made of heather and mist. The estate was locked down. The usual staff were given extended leave, replaced by a skeleton crew of absolute loyalists, individuals handpicked for their unwavering discretion and their blind allegiance to the crown. The nurse, one of the few from Diana's personal team sent with her, describes an atmosphere of suffocating tension. Diana's contact with the outside world was completely severed. There were no visitors, save for her doctor and a senior royal official who made periodic unnerving checks. Even her closest friends were told she was deeply unwell and not to be disturbed under any circumstances. She was devastated, but also fiercely determined, the nurse recalls. Diana understood perfectly that she was being managed. Her body and her unborn child, now the property of the state. She would spend hours walking the desolate, windswept moors, a solitary figure dwarfed by the immense landscape, under the constant, watchful eye of her security detail. It was a psychological war of attrition. They wanted to break her spirit, to make her compliant. They controlled her environment, her information, her very existence. But in that crushing isolation, Diana's resolve hardened. She knew she was fighting for her child. She made secret vows to herself, silent promises that she would not let them take everything from her. She plotted, she planned, she tried to find a way to escape the invisible cage they had built around her, but the monarchy had been perfecting the art of control for 1,000 years. As her secret pregnancy advanced, hidden from the world's prying cameras, Diana's hope began to fade, replaced by a grim, soul-crushing acceptance. They were going to win, and the price of her own survival would be the ultimate sacrifice of her unborn child. In the early, frozen weeks of 1984, far from the polished, media-mobbed halls of St. Mary's Hospital where Prince William had been born, Princess Diana gave birth to a healthy baby boy. There was no public announcement, no celebratory peal of bells from the ancient towers of London, no family gathered to welcome a precious new life. The birth took place in the unnerving, clinical silence of the Scottish estate, a secret event witnessed by only 4 people: Diana, her doctor, the nurse, and a senior royal official who was there to oversee the entire horrific operation. The silence was the most haunting part, the nurse remembers, her voice cracking with the memory. There should have been joy. Instead, there was only fear and a profound, suffocating sense of shame. The baby, described by the nurse as strong and healthy, was placed in Diana's arms for a few fleeting, precious moments. She reportedly embraced him, murmuring his name, a name the nurse never heard clearly, and wept uncontrollably. It was the first and the very last time she would ever hold her son. The royal official stepped forward, and the baby was taken away. The nurse recounts Diana's desperate, animalistic pleas to see him one more time, pleas that were met with the cold, clinical response that it was for the best, for everyone's best interest, especially the child's. If she severed all connection immediately, there would be no photographs, no mementos, not even a birth certificate bearing her name. She had been rendered a ghost in her own child's life story. Within hours, the infant was gone, spirited away from the estate under the cover of darkness. Diana was left utterly alone with her grief, a grief so immense and so secret it could never be spoken of. She had fulfilled a biological function, and now she was expected to forget. She had been forced to give up her child to save her own life within the royal machine. The crown had what it wanted. The threat was neutralized, and the princess was back under their absolute control. But in doing so, they had inflicted a wound so deep, so cruel, it would fester and bleed for the rest of her tragically short life. The operation that followed the secret birth was a masterclass in institutional power, a well-planned cover-up so thorough, so chillingly complete, that it left even seasoned royal officials in awe. The crown did not just hide a child. They erased his very existence from the official record. According to the nurse, a private jet was waiting at a nearby military airfield. The infant, accompanied by a discreet courier, was flown out of the country before the sun even rose, destined for the quiet anonymity of continental Europe. The adoption had been arranged months in advance through a clandestine royal liaison. The adoptive parents were a wealthy, powerful, and, most importantly, fiercely loyal European aristocratic family, with deep, historic ties to the British monarchy. They were chosen for their ability to provide a life of immense privilege and absolute privacy, and for their unquestioning willingness to be the silent guardians of the Windsor's most explosive secret. Back in London, the cleanup was already well underway. There was no official documentation linking Diana to the child. Any preliminary medical files were either sealed under state security classifications or, the nurse alleges, simply and utterly destroyed. The staff records at the Scottish estate were meticulously altered to corroborate the official story of Diana's rescue. Within a month, her personal doctor was given a prestigious but distant new post in another country, a promotion that was effectively a gilded exile. A junior staff member at the estate, who had reportedly expressed moral reservations about the events, was dismissed for an unrelated, fabricated infraction and left the royal household under a permanent cloud of disgrace, ensuring their credibility would be forever compromised. The monarchy was closing ranks, building an impenetrable wall of silence around its crime. They had created a ghost in the system, a child with no past, a mother with no proof. The nurse explains the chilling justification that was circulated in hushed tones among the few who knew. They didn't just hide a child. They cut out a piece of Diana's soul and told her it was for the good of the nation. The secret was now buried deep, and the Crown was supremely confident it would remain so forever. Weeks after giving birth, Diana returned to public life in London, her reappearance a carefully managed piece of royal theatre. She was thinner, paler, but her radiant, world-famous smile was back in place. The press, fed the official line of exhaustion, celebrated her magnificent recovery. The world saw the people's princess, resilient and beautiful as ever, but the nurse and the few others who knew the devastating truth saw something else entirely. They saw a hollow woman, a tragic echo of the vibrant girl who had entered the gilded cage just a few short years earlier. She was different, the nurse states, empty. She smiled for the cameras, but her eyes were a million miles away. There was a profound hopelessness in her gaze. The palace, meanwhile, moved swiftly to cement the new narrative. A flurry of public engagements was scheduled, and then came the ultimate, cruel act of misdirection. Later that year, the official announcement came. The Prince and Princess of Wales were expecting their second child. The world rejoiced, and the media's attention shifted entirely to the happy news, focusing on Diana's new, sanctioned pregnancy. The birth of Prince Harry in September 1984 was a moment of national celebration that effectively buried the memory of Diana's strange and sudden absence earlier in the year. It was a cruel and brilliant irony. The Crown replaced the memory of the son they had stolen with the public celebration of a legitimate heir. For Diana, the nurse claims, it was a unique and private form of torture. She had to smile and wave for the cameras, celebrating one child while secretly mourning another she could never name. The world saw a mother's joy. She felt the phantom limb of her lost son. The secret, however, did not vanish. It festered deep within her, a silent poison that would go on to shape her every action, her every rebellion, and her increasingly desperate search for a truth she was forbidden to speak. The stunning success of the Crown's cover-up depended on its absolute, ruthless control over people and information. The nurse provides a chilling, insider's account of the machinery of deception, revealing just how far the monarchy was willing to go to protect itself. Everyone involved was a cog in a machine designed for one singular purpose: to perpetuate the lie. The few loyal staff members who witnessed the horrific events in Scotland were bound by the Official Secrets Act, their silence legally mandated under the ever-present threat of treason charges. But for those who were merely adjacent to the truth, the methods were more subtle, yet just as brutally effective. A seasoned cleaner at Kensington Palace, who reportedly overheard a single fragmented conversation about a hidden baby, was abruptly fired for a minor breach of protocol. She left with a substantial severance payment and a non-disclosure agreement so restrictive it effectively barred her from ever working for a high-profile family again. The message was crystal clear: your silence has a price. But the most critical part of the cover-up was the systematic erasure of all evidence. The nurse personally witnessed a records officer from the Royal Archives arrive at the doctor's private office to remove all of Diana's files from that specific period. They were never returned. Appointment logs were altered. Handwritten notes vanished. The entire paper trail was meticulously shredded, burned, and bleached from history. Then there was the damning question of Prince Charles. The nurse asserts that while he may have been kept in the dark during the initial stages of the pregnancy, internal communications she later saw suggest he gave his official assent to the final phase of the plan, the foreign adoption protocol. Whether he did so out of a cold sense of duty, sheer indifference, or a selfish desire to be rid of a messy problem remains unclear. But his complicity, she insists, was required. The mythology and the pristine image were all that mattered. For years, the lie held. The people who knew the truth lived in a state of enforced calm, convincing themselves that their actions were a necessary evil to protect the future king, Prince William, and the stability of the nation. But as the nurse grimly explains, they weren't just protecting the monarchy, they were protecting themselves from the devastating consequences of their own monstrous secret. In the years that followed the secret birth, the world watched Princess Diana evolve into a global humanitarian icon. They saw her walking through active minefields in Angola, embracing AIDS patients when others recoiled in fear, and comforting the sick and dying in hospices around the globe. Her compassion was legendary, but the nurse suggests a heartbreaking secret lay beneath this iconic public work. Diana was quietly mourning a loss the world knew nothing about. Her endless, tireless charity work with children suddenly takes on a new, achingly poignant meaning. She bore that sorrow incessantly, the nurse recalls. You could see it when she held other people's children. It was more than just compassion. It was a deep, aching yearning. It was as if she was searching for a familiar face in every crowd. The clues were few, but for those who knew where to look, they were devastating. Her former butler and loyal confidant, Paul Burrell, once remarked in a famous televised interview, "There are secrets the princess told me that I will take to my grave," his eyes hinting at a pain that went far deeper than her public marital woes. Diana's own unpublished diaries are said to contain cryptic, sorrowful references to the one who was taken from me. In one memo she wrote to a friend, which was later revealed, she lamented, "They told me it was for the best, for a safer life. But safer for whom? Not for him, and not for my heart." This secret loss became the ghost that haunted her every waking moment. It fueled her well-documented battles with bulimia and depression, a physical manifestation of a grief she could not voice. It was the unspoken trauma that people in her inner circle sensed but could never name. While the world saw her as a glamorous, sometimes volatile, royal figure, Diana was living a tragic dual life. She was the mother of the future King of England, and she was the secret, grieving mother of a lost boy, a phantom child whose absence was the defining, silent tragedy of her entire existence. As the 1990 seconds dawned, Diana's marriage to Charles crumbled in a spectacular and very public fashion. The War of the Waleses became explosive, front-page news, emboldened by her growing independence and her declining position within the firm. Diana's private grief transformed into a quiet, desperate resolve. The nurse reveals that Diana began a clandestine, high-stakes search for her lost son. It was an incredibly risky endeavor. She was still one of the most monitored and photographed women in the world. She used trusted intermediaries and secret back channels, trying to piece together the few fragments of information she had from that fateful, nightmarish time in Scotland. She just wanted to know where he was, if he was safe, if he was happy. But at every single turn, she ran into an invisible, impenetrable wall. The monolithic power of the royal security apparatus shut her down before she could even begin. Inquiries made by her loyal allies were met with polite but firm, chilling resistance. Files were suddenly unavailable. Contacts went silent. She was told to let it go, the nurse says, her voice trembling with anger, for her own good and for the good of the boy. But how can a mother let go of her child? This secret search added a new, dangerous dimension to her escalating conflict with the royal family. They were no longer just fighting over public image and divorce settlements. Diana now possessed the one secret that could bring the entire institution to its knees, and they knew she was getting bolder. This, the nurse speculates, is why the palace began to view her with such increasing alarm. She was not just a rogue princess anymore. She was a mother on a mission. A woman who had nothing left to lose, and who was getting dangerously close to uncovering the truth they had spent years and vast resources burying. Her increasingly daring interviews and her brazen disregard for royal protocol were not just acts of rebellion, they were warning shots, signals to the palace that she would not be silenced forever. The search for her son had become her final, most personal battle against the crown. If Diana's secret child is alive, as the nurse fervently insists, then for nearly 4 decades, a man with royal blood has been living a life of complete and utter anonymity. The most tantalizing question is not just times if, times he exists, but times who times, and times where times he island. The nurse's deathbed confession has given shocking new life to old, persistent whispers that have circulated for years in the elite, closed circles of European aristocracy. The rumors speak of a man, born in early 1984, raised on the continent, with no official lineage, but with an uncanny, almost haunting resemblance to the late Princess of Wales. Those who have allegedly met him at private functions or high-stakes business dealings describe a man who carries himself with a quiet, regal confidence. They speak of his height, his athletic build, his sandy blonde hair, and most strikingly, his eyes, the deep, piercing Spencer blue. He is said to be intensely private, his background shrouded in layers of mystery, his considerable wealth derived from a vast, old money trust fund. A foreign journalist who has spent years investigating unusual adoptions among Europe's elite claims that evidence points towards a childhood spent in the cloistered privacy of Switzerland or Austria, educated in the world's most exclusive boarding schools, under a series of different, untraceable last names. He moves like a protected asset, the journalist once wrote. Not officially a royal, but always surrounded by a subtle yet unmistakable layer of security. According to the nurse, this was the entire point of the cruel arrangement. The child was to be raised in luxury and privilege, but far from the prying eyes of the relentless British press, his true parentage, a secret known only to his adoptive family and their powerful royal benefactors. But secrets of this magnitude have a way of leaving traces, of creating ghosts. This phantom of the continent, this uncrowned son of the people's princess, has been a silent, unknowing presence in the background of history. A living, breathing time bomb set to one day expose the monarchy's greatest and most unforgivable lie. For years, the story of Diana's secret son was nothing more than a whisper, a dark conspiracy theory with no tangible proof. Then, in 2011, a single, grainy photograph briefly surfaced on a small European society blog before being mysteriously scrubbed from the internet. It was taken at Vienna International Airport and showed a man in his late 20s, dressed in casual but clearly expensive clothes. He was wearing sunglasses and a cap, clearly attempting to remain incognito. But it wasn't enough. Royal watchers who managed to save the image were absolutely stunned by the resemblance. The strong jawline, the posture, the shy, downward tilt of the head, it was pure Spencer. In profile, the similarity to Diana was breathtaking. At the time, with no context, the photo was dismissed by mainstream experts, but it became a treasured piece of underground royal lore. Now, in the light of the nurse's testimony, the Vienna photograph has resurfaced with explosive new significance. Could this have been him? A fleeting, accidental glimpse of the world's greatest royal secret. Experts who have re-examined the image claim that the man bears a stronger familial resemblance to Diana than even her own 2 acknowledged sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. The nurse believes the man is fully aware of his true identity. She speculates that at some point in his adult life, he uncovered the shocking truth of his parentage, perhaps from his adoptive family on his 18th or 21st birthday. I believe he was paid for his silence, she says grimly. There would have been agreements, trusts, perhaps even veiled threats. But make no mistake, he knows who his mother island. The Vienna photograph represents a terrifying possibility for the House of Windsor, that the ghost they tried so desperately to erase has a face. And while a single photo is not definitive proof, it is a powerful symbol of a truth that refuses to stay buried. A single, visible crack in the dam of secrets that is about to burst wide open. But the nurse's most staggering claim is not just that a secret son exists, but that another, more famous son already knows the truth, Prince William. She posits that Diana, a famously prolific and candid letter writer, would never have left her boys completely in the dark. She believes Diana left behind a trail of devastating clues, a hidden diary, a locked box of letters, a coded message entrusted to a loyal friend, all intended for William to find after her death. She would have wanted him to know, the nurse insists. She would never have hidden that part of her heart from him completely. If true, this places the future King of England in an utterly impossible position, caught between his fierce loyalty to his mother's memory and his solemn, lifelong duty to protect the crown. This bombshell theory casts all of William's past actions in a new, intriguing light. His well-known, almost obsessive protectiveness over his mother's legacy becomes more than just a son's love. It becomes the heavy guardianship of her most dangerous secret. The nurse points to several undocumented private trips William has taken to Europe over the past decade. Short, cryptic 36-hour visits with no official purpose. A trip to Switzerland in 2018, officially for a private meeting, is now viewed with intense suspicion. Were these clandestine reunions a way for two half-brothers, separated by a monumental secret, to forge a quiet connection in the shadows? It is a burden of knowledge almost too great to comprehend. William would be forced to look at his father, Prince Charles, his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, and the entire institution he is destined to lead, knowing they were all complicit in an act of profound and unforgivable cruelty against his own mother. He would be living a lie every single day, upholding the very system that stole his brother and broke his mother's heart. The question is not just whether William knows, but what he will do with that knowledge. Will he continue to protect the institution, or will a day finally come when his duty to his mother's truth outweighs his sacred duty to the throne? The nurse's deathbed confession is more than just a historical scandal. It is an existential threat to the modern House of Windsor. For centuries, the British monarchy has survived bloody wars, violent revolutions, and seismic public upheavals by maintaining one thing above all else: the sacred, unbroken line of succession. This story strikes at the very heart of that legitimacy. The existence of a secret, firstborn son to the Princess of Wales, even an illegitimate one, would unleash a constitutional and public relations nightmare from which the monarchy might never recover. This is not a story of a distant king's dalliance hundreds of years ago. This alleged cover-up involves the immediate heir to the throne, Prince Charles, and directly implicates the entire senior establishment of the late 20th century. It suggests that the institution is not just flawed, but is capable of a level of cold-blooded deception and human cruelty that the modern public would find utterly unforgivable. If this man were to come forward, the fallout would be catastrophic. It would force a public reckoning with the monarchy's carefully polished, fairy tale image. The iconic narrative of Charles and Diana would be irrevocably shattered, replaced by a brutal, gut-wrenching story of a stolen child. Prince William's eventual reign would be forever tainted by the dark shadow of his hidden half-brother and the unforgivable sins of his family. The nurse, from her deathbed, makes it clear her goal is not revenge, but truth. "I kept their secrets for a lifetime," she says, her voice a fragile whisper. "I saw Diana's pain. I held her hand when she was told her son was gone forever. And now the world has to know the injustice that was done to her." The monarchy, already facing difficult questions of relevance in the 21st century, is now facing its greatest and most personal crisis. The cracks in the ancient foundation of the House of Windsor are beginning to show, and this one shocking story may be enough to bring the whole gilded structure tumbling down. The voice of a single dying nurse has unleashed a ghost from the past, a ghost that now haunts the grand, cold halls of Buckingham Palace. The story of Diana's lost son, once a whispered, paranoid conspiracy, now carries the undeniable weight of a deathbed confession. It is a narrative so powerful, so fundamentally shocking, it threatens to redefine a legacy and delegitimize an entire dynasty. We are left with the chilling, unavoidable possibility that the monarchy, to protect its pristine reputation, sacrificed a royal child, silencing the mother, disappearing the baby, and trusting that the immense weight of time and power would bury the truth forever. But secrets like these do not die. They fester, they wait, and eventually, they rise. Somewhere in the world, a man may live under a different name, with a different history, never having known the famous, tragic mother who gave him life. And inside the palace walls, a future king may carry the impossible, crushing burden of that knowledge. The monarchy may have successfully altered the course of one woman's history, but it cannot control history itself. It is now reappearing, demanding a brutal reckoning. This time, Diana's voice may finally be heard not in an old interview or a sanitized biography, but through the very existence of the son they tried to erase from the world. The crown built its modern identity on tradition, image, and the carefully curated myth of the people's princess. But if that myth was built on a foundation of unforgivable lies, its final chapter may not be about a glorious reign, but about a devastating and long overdue collapse. The ultimate bombshell has been dropped, and the House of Windsor will never be the same. Thank you for watching Majesty Uncovered. If you found this story as shocking as we did, please give this video a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Majesty Uncovered and hit the notification bell so you never miss another untold story. Video description: **** illustration. Image prompts ****. 1. Cinematic extreme close-up of an elderly, frail woman's eyes, filled with a mixture of fear and resolve, a single tear tracing a path down her wrinkled cheek. The lighting is low and somber, reminiscent of a hospice room at dusk, with soft, diffused light from a window casting long shadows. Focus is razor-sharp on the glint of emotion in her eye. AR 16.9, S750, Style RAW, Q2, 2. A shadowy, conspiratorial meeting in a lavishly decorated room in Buckingham Palace. 3 men in grey suits are huddled over a polished mahogany table, their faces obscured by deep shadows, illuminated only by a single beam of light from a desk lamp. The atmosphere is tense and secretive, with a palpable sense of impending doom. Mine, a 16:9, S750, Style RAW, Q2, 3. A heartbreaking scene of a young Princess Diana, face pale and tear-streaked, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a simple white blanket for the first and last time. The room is stark and clinical, located in a remote Scottish estate, with cold, grey light filtering through a barred window. The camera angle is tight on her face, capturing the profound agony and fleeting love in her expression. 2 AR 16:9, S750, Style RAW, Q2, 4. A ghostly, long-shot image of a solitary young woman, recognizably Diana, walking on a desolate, misty Scottish moor. She is a small, forlorn figure, dwarfed by the vast, empty landscape, symbolizing her complete isolation and imprisonment. The color palette is muted with grays, deep greens, and browns, enhancing the feeling of profound loneliness. Renga, R 16:9, S750, Style RAW, Q2. Number 5. A covert shot of a private jet on a foggy military airfield at dawn. A shadowy male figure carries a small bundle, the baby, up the steps into the aircraft. The scene is clandestine and urgent, shot from a distance as if by a hidden observer, with the plane's engines beginning to glow in the pre-dawn light. AR 16:9, S750, Style RAW, Q2, 6. A photorealistic image of a records officer in a dark suit, meticulously shredding official-looking documents with a royal crest. The room is a dusty archive, shelves overflowing with old files, and a single light bulb overhead casts a harsh glare on the destructive act. Particles of shredded paper hang in the air like dust motes. AR 16:9, S750, Style RAW, Q2, 7. A poignant shot of Princess Diana in the 1990 seconds, forcing a radiant smile for the cameras at a public event, but her eyes are distant, hollow, and filled with an unspeakable sadness. The contrast between her public persona and private pain is the central focus, captured with a telephoto lens that blurs the adoring crowd in the background. AR 16.9, S750, Style RAW, Q2. Illustration image prompts 16:9, 1080p. **SEO tags. ***, Princess Diana, Royal Family, Royal Secret, British Monarchy, Princess of Wales, Diana's Children, Prince William, Prince Harry, Queen Elizabeth, Prince Charles, Royal Scandal, Conspiracy, Untold Story, Royal History, House of Windsor, Kensington Palace, Buckingham Palace, Historical Documentary, Royal Cover-Up, SEO tags. ***, thumbnail prompts. ***. 1. A dramatic split-screen thumbnail. On the left, a famous, smiling portrait of Princess Diana in her prime. On the right, a mysterious, grainy silhouette of an unknown young man against a dark European backdrop. A glowing, jagged line separates the two images, with the text Diana's lost son in bold, shocking letters. AR 16:9, S750, Style RAW, Q2. 2. An extreme close-up of Princess Diana's eyes, filled with deep, heartbreaking sorrow. Superimposed over her face is a semi-transparent, ghostly image of a newborn baby's hand. The color is desaturated, giving it a tragic, historical feel. The composition is emotionally charged and immediately intriguing. 2. AR 16.9 S750 style RAW Q2 3. A high-contrast black and white image of a single classified royal document stamped secret in bold red ink. A corner of the document is being burned away by a flame, revealing a glimpse of Diana's face underneath. The image is mysterious and suggests a hidden truth being exposed. AR 16.9 S750 style RAW Q2 4. A photorealistic composition of a shadowy, anonymous old woman, the nurse, whispering into the ear of a journalist whose face shows an expression of pure shock. In the background, a faded, ghostly image of Buckingham Palace looms under a stormy sky. The thumbnail creates an intense atmosphere of conspiracy and forbidden knowledge. AR 16.9 S8 750 style RAW Q2 5. A powerful image focusing on a single, handwritten, tear-stained letter. The handwriting is recognizably Diana's, and the only visible words are, "My baby. They took my baby." The letter rests on a dark, polished surface, creating a somber and deeply personal hook that promises an emotional story. AR 16.9 S750 style RAW Q2. Thumbnail prompts 16:9 1080p. Engaging thumbnail concept. Generation summary. Channel name used, Majesty Uncovered. Opening hook. Generated 10 to 20 second attention grabber. Total characters 40190. Chapters generated 18. Language English. Knowledge sections applied 12/12. Cultural elements preserved. Yes. Enhanced features complete package ready.